Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow! So, Basil says to me, what was that text conversation about? What was that text conversation about with Lilith? And how did you teach her from the hereafter how to text? And they have phones in the hereafter? They have cell phones? Well, Basil, apparently you were never issued a cell phone when you headed off low these 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years on December 28th. And we should have known that. We should have known that Basil was gone. I mean, all of a sudden, nothing was being eaten out of the litter bin. Nothing was being drank out of the water bowl. Did I say nothing was being left in the litter pan? You're welcome. Apology accepted. Nothing being left in the litter pan. Nothing missing out of the food dish. At least not Basil's food dish. Nothing missing out of the water bowl. At least Basil's water bowl, until it evaporated, until it all ran dry, which is like a month later. And we should have known that Basil was gone. But you know how we found out, and it's worth repeating because I always like to give kudos where kudos are due, and so does Basil. Basil's happy that somebody finally realized that it was actually a two-dimensional cat sitting here next to me and not the real Basil BuddhaCat. And the person, do you want to tell the story? Basil says, I'll tell it, and then you can translate it. It says, Marty Heiser. So actually it was Marty Heiser who figured out that Basil was no longer with us, that we had a two-dimensional avatar of Basil. And let me readjust your feather just a tiny bit. There you go. You were hiding a little bit too much behind there. I'd like to see you a little bit better. Although when we go like that, we can't see it because it's just a blank sheet of paper behind you. I don't know why. So Basil says he had a guest on named Marty Heiser. And Marty Heiser came on the show and seemed confused. He seemed confused because he couldn't figure out how I was able to talk to a cat, for one thing. And, that's because Marty didn't speak cat. He probably speaks cat now, and if he doesn't, Marty, you really ought to. Bill Murray, could you come down out of your hammock and get in the car and drive off to Marty Heiser's house in Richfield and teach him how to speak cat? And on the way, Bill, pick up our friend Tony. I gave you directions on how to find Tony's house. Pick up our friend Tony, who is always with us in spirit, not only on this show, but always with us in spirit on Progressive Soup. Tony, shout out to you, Tony, in TV land, in Comcast land. So go get in the car, pick up Tony, and go down to Marty's house. He's not so busy this time of the year. His company, Services Unlimited, trademark. They do principally exterior painting in the warmer months, and this time of the year, they stay busy doing some interior painting, some wallpaper removal, some interior studio preparation for companies. They do a lot of stuff to stay busy, but they're not quite as busy as they are during the summertime, where Marty's guys are out there from dawn until dusk, house painting, and they do a fabulous job. They have people that come back to them after after 10, 15, 20 years, and the house needs painting again. And they're calling Marty because Marty did a great job at a reasonable price the first time. He no cutting corners, and Basil he loves Marty. He really does. But he's going to have to take a little bit of an exception, because he's heard the story from me about how I painted the house on 8 Highland Avenue after buying the house in 1983. And that's 30 years ago, 31 years ago now, almost 32 years ago. And that house, painted with the very best quality paint and a very, very semi-thorough application. Good scraping in advance, that's always good. Good preparation, and a great quality paint. And 31, almost 32 years ago. And that paint, the house is still Cape Cod gray and Cape Cod blue shutters. And interestingly enough, interesting side note, the style of the house is Cape Cod. So that's a triple play in anybody's books. So Basil's note, and how I told him how the house at 8 Highland Avenue, not trademarked, not belonging to me anymore. It actually belongs to the parents of a young man who went to Bethel High School with my son Colby, and that young man went on to write the book Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer, which was made into a pretty successful, pretty well-made movie. And so the house went from being Meg Ryan's dad's house to being Colby Stevenson's dad's house to being the author of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer's mom and dad's house. Hey, okay. Lil's back, Basil. Lil's. Don't even need to check. We know her number. Hello, Lil. It's not working on speakerphone, but she's there. She can hear me, and I can hear her. So take my word for it. Lil's with us. And simultaneously, she's with Basil. So can't be in two places at once? Hell yeah. Or, as Ted Cruz, who doesn't believe in reincarnation, perhaps, or probably doesn't, would counter with, what the Okay. If Ted Cruz says, what the would Marco Rubio, whose parents emigrated to the United States to escape communism 4 years before Castro was even involved in the revolution? Prescient people, obviously. Would he also say, would Marco Rubio also say, what the Basil says, yes, they. Okay. So we were talking with Megan Fox on Friday night. And we're waiting to hear back from her, because we gave her the question. She went through a museum of natural history in some unnamed city. Had a videotape guy with her who actually took some interesting videotape of what's going on in the museum, the different exhibits. And Megan Fox commented about how it's impossible for us to know, to have any evidence that, any evidence at all that anything happened more than 6,000 years ago. And apparently, probably more than about 20 years ago. Because she said that anything that ever happened, God has videotape. God is not a registered trademark, by the way. God would have allowed somebody to videotape. He would have had it videotaped, because that's just how God operates, apparently, in Megan Fox's book. So since there's no videotape available of, let's say, the beginning of the Earth, the origin of the planet 4 billion years ago, the origin of the solar system 4 billion years ago, the origin of the universe 12 billion years ago, there would have been, if it happened that way, because God would have used his super duper video camera, which he had at the time, because God created everything, including video cameras, and would have had to have a video camera with a 12 billion year warranty, because otherwise, who knows what could go wrong with a video camera? You know, nothing lasts forever, except when it's God's video camera. So she says that since there's no evidence that for instance, that dinosaurs lived 500 million years ago through about 76 million years ago, when there was, in scientists' mind, a meteor colliding with Earth, a meteor the size of Mount Everest colliding with Earth, and off the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and blowing up a cloud of dust and blowing up an incredible amount of mayhem. Don't sue us, all state. And dinosaurs quickly became extinct because they died, and or their food supply died, or their food supply died and then they died, except for apparently a few little mammals that had been in existence for a while, and were the beginning of a whole new set of animals on the earth, with the exception of animals in the ocean, because the oceans weren't destroyed. You know, the cloud of dust and everything else. So the ocean survived. Most fish, apparently, or at least a lot of fish, including sharks, survived, and that's why sharks have been around for, well, in scientists' minds' eye, 300 million years. In Megan Fox's mind's eye, almost 6,000 years. Pretty close, about 6,000 years. So, but that's a different calendar. That's a calendar that allows that some guy named Methuselah lived to be 900 years. So wait a second, let's do the math. If Methuselah lived to be 900 years instead of, say, let's say 50 years, as we would give him credit for, 5 times 18, that would make, that still falls a bit short, because 18 times 6,000 years is 108,000 years. So that's still a bit. That's still off by a bit when compared to 4 billion years. Okay. So well, scientists say 4 billion years approximately for the Earth. They can measure that in carbon dating and in other methodology. Megan Fox says 6,000 years because that's what the Bible tells her. And who can refute the Bible over scientists? I mean, the Bible was written by either by the hand of God or by some dudes who are just telling the history of the Israeli people, of the Jewish people, and go figure. So, Basil, while we're waiting for a call from Megan Fox to tell us that either Sarah Palin, whom she had a discussion with about this matter, either Sarah Palin has told her to admit that she might be wrong, or otherwise to do like Sarah Palin would always do and blame somebody else. What do you think? What do you think Sarah Palin's? What do you think advice Sarah Palin's going to give her? That awaits to be seen. But in the meanwhile, we have to do our commercials, because we didn't do enough on the commercials last time, and we have to prove to Budweiser that we're worthy of their sponsorship, because they're having this tiff with the National Football League about something about bad behavior by a lot of their players, and it doesn't look good for the league, and it doesn't look good consequently for Budweiser as their corporate sponsor, one of their corporate sponsors. So they're fighting it out over that, and if we can get Budweiser to ditch the NFL, we might be able to get Budweiser to join us. Likewise, with this Tiger Woods snafu, if we can get Nike to ditch Tiger Woods, which I think they have already, we're trying to get Nike, and we had some guy who claimed to be named Joe Nike on a call last week, not Friday night, but I think it was previous Friday night. A guy who claimed to be Joe Nike, and he was a member of the Nike family, and he gave us some glimmer of hope that we might also be able to get Nike sponsorship. So, what else are we going to do while we're waiting for... okay, we'll do the commercials and then we'll figure out what to do from there. Because we have about 12 minutes to go. Okay, first of all, not A&W root beer, but P A&W root beer. And how do we know that P A&W root beer is Basil's root beer of choice? Well, for the same reason that we better get the whole the same reason we know why Tootsie Roll, and here's Tootsie Roll, and we know P A&W root beer is Basil's root beer of choice for exactly the same reason that we know that that Tootsie Roll is Basil's candy of choice. And how do we know? Well, I'm getting tired of saying it, Basil. You say it first. Meow. 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 And furthermore, we'll use an extra sound effect. Okay. It says, look at my litter pan. Then you'll know that P A&W root beer with a distinctive extra letter airbrushed in, and Tootsie Roll, and this is about a 12-week-old sample of either Tootsie Roll or something else. We're hoping it's Tootsie Roll. It doesn't smell that bad. But Basil is quick to remind me that, hold on, said, says, my don't stink. So, any other, okay, who have we missed? Schweppervescence, a Pepsi product. And because it's a Pepsi product, we're hoping to get the entire Pepsi account, because Pepsi used to be tied in with, was it Pepsi or Coke that was doing the National Football League? We don't know. We don't watch the games. How are we supposed to know about something that we really... All we know is what we read in the online, and all the stories about all the dudes that seem to be so excited about beating up their girlfriends and kicking ass on their kids and thrashing their kids with sticks and other things. Rat agrees to that. Pig agrees to that. Lilith, of course, hold on. Lilith agrees to that. Okay. Okay. And it's unanimous. Sharky agrees to that. Okay. Okay. Well, we're waiting for the word back from Megan Fox, and we're hoping. We might be hoping against hope that she'll call back and she'll and say either that she accepts that science could be right, and the world could be 4 billion years old, and the universe could be 12 billion years old, but we're not holding our breath. She might get a call from Sarah Palin, telling us to leave her alone and stop doing to Megan Fox what we do to Sarah Palin. Okay, but in the meanwhile, let's talk about a New York Times bestseller by a gal named Melody Beattie, who is the author of Codependence No More, Beyond Codependency, The Language of Letting Go, and several other books, which do not include the Bible. She tried to take credit for the Bible apparently, but she got slapped down by God about that. Wow. Over 3,500,000 sold. Now, unless Megan Fox has videotape evidence of every individual sale of every book that Melody Beattie ever wrote, that's to say, a videotape record of anybody and everybody going into a bookstore, whichever bookstore they bought it at, and going through the process of buying her books. Unless they have that, then no evidence. Sorry. Now it also says underneath, it says, well, of course, the title of the book is The Lessons of Love, Rediscovering Our Passion for Life when it all seems too hard to take. Okay. And here's a quote. You can't put it down, Mademoiselle. That's from the magazine Mademoiselle. A quote. Somebody that works for Mademoiselle got paid some money to write this term, this phrase. You can't put it down. Maybe they got 2 million of those 3 million copies in exchange for making that wonderful statement. You can't put it down. Well, I guess we just did put it down, because if we're saying that the lessons of love ain't what it's cracked up to be, and in her books aren't what they cracked up to be, based on sales short of that 3.5 million copies of all the books combined, then we're putting it down. So, there's also on the back, hold on, it says on the back, inspiration, and if you can see real closely, there's a picture of the author, Melody Beattie, who Megan Fox doesn't believe exists because she's never met her. Okay, it says, the timeless, magical story of one woman's return to life and love when she thought she had lost it all. And then down a little further, Beattie's sixth and most heartfelt book, The Lessons of Love, inspires courage and hope. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle, where maybe another 500,000 of those copies got sent to in exchange for that glowing endorsement. Another one. Beattie's compelling narrative instructs by example, showing that patience and the willingness to make and forgive mistakes are the qualities that count. The well-told story speaks for itself. Again, from Mademoiselle. And there's 2.5 million copies accounted for in exchange for these glowing endorsements. Another one from Dallas Morning News. A moving exploration of grief and recovery, complete with a happy ending. That's got to be worth at least another 1 million copies in exchange for that glowing endorsement. So there's 3 million copies out of 3.5 million copies that have been sold. Okay, and another one from the Oregonian. I guess that's out in Oregon. This is Beattie's best book. She shows that the zest for life can resurface and magic can happen. Together, Melody and Shane Beattie have given us all a gift. And perhaps they've given another 500,000 copies to the Oregonian as a gift in exchange for the glowing endorsement. And that adds up to 3.5 million copies, and there's the 3.5 million copies sold. So there you go. We have the only copy up here, apparently, that anyone actually paid money for. So that's it. The Lessons of Love. Good book. Very good book. And we'll read it backwards because that's always the best way to read something backwards. Or if we were, oh, look at that, it says 50 cents, which either means that the book was purchased and donated to us by a famous rapper, 50 Cent, or this is what we actually paid for the book. So far on 3.5 million copies printed, somebody apparently paid 50 cents for one copy. That's another glowing endorsement in and of itself. So we're still waiting. We've got to get a call back from her. It's we're getting close to the end of the show, and we've got to get a call back from Megan Fox. And I don't know. I don't know. We've got to get a call back from Megan Fox. That's what this entire show is based on. Her response to our question. Which, to remind those in the audience, Bill Murray fell asleep. You might have missed it. Bill, the question we sent out to Megan Fox was if she can look toward you and accept the fact that what's behind her doesn't exist, even though she can't see it, that she can accept that it does exist even though she can't see it, then maybe she could accept the fact that without videotape evidence of something that happened 4 billion years ago, she can accept the possibility that that maybe it happened and maybe scientists are right. Okay. Bill's back asleep apparently. He's been up in that hammock since January, since he was here for the Superb Owl broadcasts. And he likes that hammock. It's doing him well. But Bill, you got to get down. You got some other movies to make before you're finished. You made some good movies so far. We want some more movies out of you. Okay. And we are running short of time. So, I don't know. Maybe okay. It's on the Inky Dinky phone, and we know it's on the Inky Dinky phone because we still have Lilith is still there. Yep. Likewise, Lilith is still there. Likewise, Lilith is still there. Now I hear her in stereo. She's still there. And the call, Tweety is acknowledging that the call is from Megan Fox. And hello, I'm glad you were able to call back while the show still has about a minute left in it. But you've had some time to mull over our question, which we've managed to enunciate 3 times to the audience, so that everybody knows what the question is. So could you please give us your response to our question to you? And, okay. Hey, speakerphone's working. Okay, hold on, we got you on speakerphone. Go ahead. What's your reply? What? There you go. That's her response. And with that, this has been Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson, Basil's co-host, interpreter, and chief gopher. Have a blessed Sunday morning, and we'll see you next Friday night. Bye.
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.